Well, Clint Eastwood is one of a handful of extraordinary actors to have found success in front and behind the camera. His first time as a director, music Clint Eastwood has starred in countless films, but there's one 1970 Western he regrets making, and it has nothing to do with the role or the script. The reason, his female co-star, something happened between them behind these scenes that left a lasting mark. And ever since, Eastwood has avoided the topic entirely. So, what went wrong? And we ish the reason he still won't talk about this film? Let's get into the story Clint Eastwood wishes would stayed. An unconventional start for Eastwood. Before the sharp one-liners, the tailored suits, the women, and the fast cars, Clint Eastwood was just a lanky kid from San Francisco. Born on May 31, 1930 at St. Francis Memorial Hospital, Clint weighed in at a whopping 11 pounds, earning him the nickname Simpson from the nurses. His parents, Ruth and Clinton Eastwood, were living in Oakland's Lake Merritt neighborhood at the time, though Clint's early years were anything but settled. The family moved 3 times in the 1930s as his father changed jobs. But by the 40s, they had found stability and comfort in Piedmont, California. They belonged to a country club, had a swimming pool, and each parent drove their own car. Despite that privilege, Clint didn't exactly thrive in school. He struggled academically at Piedmont Middle, got held back, and had to attend summer school. At Piedmont High, things only got worse. He was asked to leave after writing an obscene message on the scoreboard and burning an effigy on school grounds. He ended up at Oakland Tech, graduating in 1949. Eastwood spent his late teens working odd jobs: lifeguard, grocery clerk, golf caddy, and even forest firefighter. In 1951, he considered enrolling at Seattle University, but instead he was drafted into the US Army during the Korean War. Stationed at Fort Ord, rumor had it he was romantically involved with an officer's daughter, which may have helped him avoid the front lines, but fate had its own test. On his way back from a secret rendezvous in Seattle, Clint boarded a Douglas Ad bomber that ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean near Point Reyes. He and the pilot swam 2 miles to shore using a life raft. He was discharged in February 1953, just 22 years old, already carrying stories few could top. Eastwood's acting debut. Clint Eastwood got his first big break thanks to a Universal International Acoma crew filming at Fort Ord. An assistant spotted him and invited him to meet the director, but this version is disputed. Eastwood's unauthorized videograph. Patrick McGilligan claimed otherwise. According to Clint's official biography, the real turning point came through Chuck Hill, a fellow Ford soldier with Hollywood connections. When Hill ran into Clint again in Los Angeles, he managed to sneak him onto the Universal lot and introduced him to cameraman Irving Goldberg. Impressed by Clint's rugged looks and towering 64 in frame, Goldberg arranged an audition with director Arthur Lubin. Lubin saw potential but wasn't sold on Clint's acting. He found him stiff, inexperienced, and unsure of where to move or look on camera. Still, Lubin advised him to take drama classes and got him his first contract in April 1954, paying $100 a week. Early criticism followed. His delivery was flat, and he spoke through clenched teeth, a habit that would become a signature. That May, Clint auditioned for 6 Bridges to Cross, but was rejected. Still, persistence paid off. After a string of failed auditions, director Jack Arnold gave him a small role in Revenge of the Creature, 1955, the sequel to Creature from the Black Lagoon. That September, Clint spent 3 weeks on Arthur Lubin's Lady Digvalve Coventry, and by February 1955, landed the part of Jonesy, a sailor in Francis in the Navy. He also had credited roles in Tarantula as a squadron pilot and in Never Say Goodbye and Star in the Dust, where he played a ranch hand and briefly dated co-star Van Doren. His first TV role came on July 2, 1955 in NBC's Allen in Movieland alongside Steve Allen, Tony Curtis, and Benny Goodman. But despite steady progress, Universal dropped his contract in October 1955. Without a studio deal, Clint signed with the Marsh Agency. Lubin helped where he could, casting him in the first traveling sales lady and escapade in Japan. But Clint's career stalled. On the advice of financier manager Irving Leonard, he joined the Olenek Agency in 1956 and later Mitchell Gertz in 1957. Slowly, minor TV roles trickled in. In 1956, he played a hot-headed Army officer on Reader's Digest and Amateursical Gang. member on Highway Patrol. In 1957, he appeared as a West Point cadet and a suicidal gold prospector on Death Valley Days. In 1958, things picked up. He played a naval lieutenant on Navy Log and made a guest appearance on Maverick as Red Hardigan, a cowardly villain scheming to marry Formoni. That same year, he had a small role in Lafayette Escadrille and a Majerone in Ambush at Cimarron Pass, a film Clint would later call the low point of his career. But then came Raw Hadid, Clint Eastwood in epic westerns. In 1958, Clint was cast as Rowdy Yates in CBS Western series Raw Hadid, his long-awaited breakout. The timing was right, but the role wasn't perfect. At nearly 30, Clint found the character too young and clumsy for his liking. Still, filming began in Arizona that summer, and within 3 weeks, Raw had decked the top 20 in TV ratings. It never won an Emmy, but it became a massive hit, peaking at number 6 between 1960 and 1961. The Whittier's 1959-1965 were some of the most demanding of Clint's life. Shooting often ran 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Yet some directors still accuse him of not working hard enough. By late 1963, ratings began to slip and the scripts felt tired. The show was canceled midway through the 1965-66 season. During the run of Rawhide, Clint Eastwood made his first attempt at directing, shooting promotional trailers for the show, but producers weren't ready to give him a full episode. Still, the series paid off. In Season 1, he earned $750 per episode. By the time the show was canceled, he was pulling in $119,000 per episode. Raw Hadid hadn't just made him a star, it had made him bankable. Then came a twist of fate. In 1963, Eastwood's co-star Eric Fleming turned down a role in a low-budget Italian western called A Fistful of Dollars Tobe, filmed in a remote part of Spain. By an unknown director named Sergio Leone, actor Richard Harrison suggested Eastwood for the role. Knowing Clint could pull off the cowboy look, Eastwood agreed, seeing it as a way to escape his squeaky clean rawhide image. He signed in for $15,000 and a bonus Mercedes-Benz after 11 weeks of work. Eastwood later admitted he was tired of playing that typical white hat hero who kissed dogs and old ladies. He wanted to try something darker, more mysterious and dandy hero, and that's exactly what he created. He helped shape the now iconic man with no-name persona, adding his own style and minimal dialogue. Although Eastwood didn't smoke, Leon insisted the character needed cigars as part of the mask. Leon once explained he didn't need an actor, he needed a mask. And back then, Eastwood had only two expressions, with the hat and without. A Fistful of Dollars became a landmark spaghetti western. Leon portrayed a grittier, more lawless world, and Eastwood's silent, stoic gunslinger broke the mold of the traditional American hero. The film was a huge hit in Italy, and Eastwood was quickly rehired for a few dollars more, 1965, and then the final part of trilogy, The Good, The Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, screenwriter Luciano Vincenzone helped pencil the rights to United Artists. For around $9,000,000 in 1966, Eastwood met with producer Dino De Laurentiis in New York and agreed to appear in a non-Western anthology film, The Witches, Lestrig, opposite Ted Lawrence's wife, Selena Mangano. His 19-minute segment was shot in just a few days. Not long after, he was back with Lee in filming The Good, The Bad, and the Ugly. Lee Van Cleef returned as a ruthless bounty hunter, while Eli Wallach played the wild Mexican bandit, Tuco. The plot centered on a buried fortune in Confederate gold. During one tense scene, Eastwood warned Wallach to move far away from the bridge that was about to be blown up. He insisted he knew how dangerous effects could be and told Wallach to get to higher ground. Minutes later, miscommunication on set triggered the explosion early, something that could have easily killed Wallach. Eastwood later explained that his goal with The Man with No Name was to say little and express everything through body language and attitude. He wanted to keep the mystery alive and let the audience fill in the blanks. After years stuck on Rawhide, it was the kind of role he had been craving. Although Thedler's trilogy wasn't released in those until 1967, it exploded in popularity. A Fistful of Dollars debuted in January for a few dollars more, followed in May, and The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly closed the year in December. All three were commercial hits, especially The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, which earned $8 million in rentals and pushed Eastwood into the Hollywood A-list. He landed fifth on Quigley's list of top 10 money-making stars in 1968. Critics, however, were not impressed. A Fistful of Dollars was dismissed as cheapjack, while For a Few Dollars More was labeled excruciatingly. The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly got slammed as pious and repellent. Time called Eastwood, though a few reviewers like Vincent Connie and Bosley Crowther praised his quiet intensity. Leon's cinematography, on the other hand, earned near universal praise. Stardom opened more doors. Eastwood signed on for Hang 'em High, 1968, a revenge western where he played a lynching survivor-turned lawman. It earned him $400,000 and 25% of box office profits. With his dollar's money, Eastwood's advisor, Irving Leonard, helped him launch high sound production company, Malpasa Productions, named after a creek near Eastwood's property in Monterey County. Clint Eastwood's wild love life. Just like the plot twists in his movies, Clint Eastwood's love life has had more than a few dramatic turns. When Eastwood first stepped into the Hollywood spotlight in the 1950s, he was newly married to his first wife, Maggie Johnson. It would go on to be his longest relationship, but far from the smoothest. From affairs to secret children, their marriage was anything but ordinary. And since then, Eastwood's romantic life has only gotten more tangled, filled with high-profile relationships, flings, and children whose existence sometimes didn't come to light until decades later. Eastwood met Maggie Johnson in May 1953. She was a student at the University of California, Berkeley. He had just been discharged from the military and was planning to attend Los Angeles City College. Before starting school, he went to visit a friend in San Francisco who set him upon a blind date with Maggie despite her already having a boyfriend. She recalled how surprised she was when she saw Eastwood for the first time. She said she came down the stairs of the sorority house, saw his back turned, and was stunned when he turned around. Something about his quiet confidence settled her in. Eastwood said they hit it off right away and kept seeing each other even though he was dating other people. In fact, before even moving to LA, he had already fathered a child with another woman in Seattle. Still, his romance with Johnson continued after she graduated and moved in with her family in Alhambra, California. The couple began talking about marriage. Eastwood admitted he was hesitant, but eventually pressed. They got married on December 19, 1953, just months before his daughter Lori Murray was born and placed for adoption, a fact he wouldn't learn about for years. But marriage didn't magically change Eastwood's frou-frou lifestyle. He later called their first year terrible and admitted he still wanted to do as he pleased. By the late 1950s, he was having another affair, this time one that led to the birth of his second child, Kimberlyn, in 1964. Whether Johnson knew about the affair remains unclear. In Richard Schickel's Clint Eastwood, a biography, a friend of the couple, Fritz Maines, claimed that Maggie once asked if Clint was fooling around. Maines lied to assure her, and Johnson reported Lycos not to dwell on it. Looking back, Eastwood once said that Maggie was a man who understood just how much space he needed. Still, the couple went on to have two children of their own, Kyle in 1968 and Allison in 1972. They moved to Carmel by the Sea and spent 7 years building their dream home, but by the time it was finished, the marriage had crumbled partly due to rumored infidelity with his The Outlaw Josie Wales co-star Sandra Locke. Eastwood admitted that he and Johnson were constantly arguing about the house scene growing apart. By 1979, after years of tension, and with his relationship with Locke in full swing, Eastwood and Johnson separated. Their divorce was finalized in 1984, with Johnson reportedly receiving a $25 million settlement, but despite everything, they remained on good terms. She even stood beside him along with their children when he became mayor of Carmel in 1986. But while Eastwood was still married to Johnson, another woman entered his life, stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. The two met on the set of Frowida in 1959 and began what would become a 14-year affair. In 1964, Tunis gave birth to their daughter, Kimberlyn. Eastwood claimed he had no idea she was pregnant and didn't find out about Kimber's birth until a year later. The news, he said, hit him like getting few and knocked out of him. Though he made arrangements to care for Kimber, visits were rare, about once every 3 or 4 months. Tunis stayed in his life for a while longer, visiting him on sets and at the office. But the exact end off-tier relationship remains a mystery, and that was just the beginning of Eastwood's long-tangled history with the women in his life and the secrets that came with them. Clint Eastwood's many affairs. Clint Eastwood first crossed paths with Sandra Lockett in 1972 when she auditioned for his film Breezy. At the time, Eastwood was still married to Maggie Johnson, and Latch was in a platonic marriage with her childhood best friend, Gordon Anderson. Though she didn't land the role, Latch was later cast in The Outlaw Josie Wales in 1975, and that's when things took a sharp turn. The two began a secret affair. In her autobiography, The Good, the Bad, and the Very Ugly, Latch recalled that Eastwood told her there was no real relationship left between him and Johnson. After filming ended, the affair continued and Latch moved into one of Eastwood's homes. By the time they began working on The Gauntlet, the whisper had turned into full-blown tabloid headlines, but publicly they insisted they were just close friends. Latch described Eastwood with the great statement of respect, admiration, and fondness. To People magazine in 1978, she deflected the rumors, claiming that even if they were true, which they weren't, it wasn't something she'd ever talk about. The following year, Eastwood and Johnson separated. Behind the scenes, Latch alleged that she'd already had 2 abortions and a tubal liation, claiming Eastwood didn't want any more children. Eastwood later denied this. The relationship with Latch dragged on for over a decade, turning increasingly toxic. Meanwhile, Latch remained Marietta Anderson, who was gay, and while she thought she was in an exclusive relations, Eastwood was busy having simultaneous affairs. One with flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves and another with actress Frances Pfizer. By 1989, Lockett and Eastwood were barely even speaking. Then, without warning, Cher turned home to find her belongings moved into storage and the locks changed allegedly by Eastwood himself. Cher responded with a palimony lawsuit accusing him of causing her emotional and physical distress and demanding $1.3 million, a share of their properties, and compensation for the years they lived as domestic partners. As the cast dragged on, Latch was also battling breast cancer. In 1990, they reached a settlement. Eastwood agreed to give her $450,000 in cash, monthly support payments, a $1.5 million development deal at Warner Brothers, and the house where Anderson lived. But that deal came crashing down too. Latch later discovered that Warner Brothers rejected every project she pitched, a move she believed was Eastwood's way of keeping her from working. In 1995, she sued him again, this time for fraud. They settled privately. In 1996, Latch died in November 2018 from cardiac arrest linked to breast and bone cancer. Through it all, she and Anderson never divorced and remained close friends until her death. Reflecting on her years with Eastwood, she admitted her biggest regret was not walking away sooner. She wished she had understood who he truly was before wasting over a decade of her life. Meanwhile, Eastwood's tangled web of relationships didn't slow down. While still with Lockett, he quietly started seeing flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. Not much is known about their relationship, but Reeves gave birth to their son Scott in 1986 and daughter Karine in 1988. Then in late 1988, Eastwood met actress Frances Pfizer during pre-production for Pink Cadillac. Fisher described it as love at first sight. She showed up to the party on roller skates, and when she saw Eastwood, she felt like a puzzle piece had snapped into place. They grew close during filming and secretly started dating. By the time Eastwood's breakup with Latch made headlines in 1989, Pfizer was shocked because she hadn't even known about that relationship. They eventually moved in together and by 1992 were attending red carpet events as a couple. Fisher described their romance as steady, serious, and fun. In 1993, they welcomed their daughter, Francesca. For a while, it felt like a real family, but by the end of that year, things fell apart. Fisher discovered Eastwood had 2 secret children with Reeves and saw paparazzi photos of him kissing another woman. She moved into the guest house, and by 1995, they had officially split. Still, she later admitted that if you don't get past the honeymoon stage and face the deeper parts of a relationship, you're bound to fall apart. Remarkably, the two remain on friendly terms and have even appeared at public events together. In 2004, Fisher told Svata that when you've truly loved someone and avoid pettiness, the love never reality disappears. Next came Dina Ruiz, a Tavanker Eastwood met during an interview. They married in 1996 and had a daughter, Morgan. The marriage lasted longer than most of his previous relationships, but in 2013, it too unraveled. That same year, while still married to Dina, Eastwood began speaking with Erica Tomlinson Fisher, the ex-wife of Scott Fisher, a longtime friend of Dina's. Erica had reached out to Eastwood because she was concerned about Dina and Scott reconnecting, but that call led to something more. By March 2013, Eastwood and Erica were quietly dating. Though they never confirmed the relationship, paparazzi eventually caught them together in law. It's unclear exactly when or how that romance ended. After Erica, Eastwood met Christina Sandera, a restaurant hostess, in 2015. The couple made their red carpet debut at the Oscars. In 2018, Sandera joined Eastwood, his kids, granddaughter, and even his first wife, Maggie Johnson, at the premiere of The Mule. It seemed like she had found a place in his famously complicated life. But in July 2024, Eastwood revealed that Sandra had passed away at the age of 61. From public scandals to private heartbreaks, Eastwood's romantic life has often played out like one of his movies, messy, dramatic, and full of unexpected twists. But Sandra Locke remained the honor relationship he never quite outran, and the one that continues to cast a long shadow over his legacy. But just as Sandra Locke haunted his personal life, there was someone else who left a different kind of mark on his career. A co-star who didn't just clash with him behind the scenes, but made him question the entire project. Two Mules for Sister Sarah. If there was one movie Clint Eastwood quietly regretted making, it was Two Mules for Sister Sarah. And no, it wasn't because of the script or the character he played. It wasn't the grueling shoot in the heat of Mexico or even the scorpion stings and food poisoning that plagued the crew. The real reason, Shirley Milan. At first glance, the 1970 Western looked like a promising project, directed by Don Siegel and set against the dramatic backdrop of the French intervention in Mexico. Two Mules for Sister Sarah paired Eastwood with Milan in a dusty, action-packed adventure full of explosions, mercenaries, and a surprise twist. Eastwood played Hogan, a rugged ex-soldier turned mercenary. Milan was Sister Sarah, a nun or so Hogan thought fleeing French troops. But behind the camera, things weren't nearly as fun. Filming kicked off with big ambitions. The movie was supposed to be the first in a 5-year deal between Universal Pictures and Seinen Productions of Mexico. It was Eastwood's second team-up with director Don Siegel after Coogan's Bluff, and they were looking to replicate that success. Ennio Morricone even came on board to compose the film's music, adding prestige. The movie had everything going for it except chemistry, but when its leads, the tension started early. Originally, the role of Sister Sarah was offered to none other than Elizabeth Taylor. She had shown Eastwood the script on the set of Where Eagles Dare, hoping to star opposite him. Butler had to drop out when she insisted the film be shot in Spain, where her husband Richard Burton was working. When she backed out, the studio cast Shirley Milan, a move that Eastwood reported didn't love from the get-go. The character of Sister Sarah was supposed to be Mexican. Milan was pale, fiery, and unapologetically tough. The studio had high hopes for her musical sweet Chariton, pushed her into the role despite the obvious mismatch. Eastwood and Siegel both had concerns about the casting, and it didn't take long before those concerns were confirmed. Milan came to set with a reputation for being strong-willed, but what Eastwood encountered was something else entirely. Accordito reports he found her cold and difficult. Siegel didn't mince words either. He described Milan as too feminine and having too many balls, adding that it was hard to feel any warmth toward her. It wasn't just about personality differences. It was an energy clash that never resolved. Filming in the Mexican countryside Nartleacapan should have been a bondage experience. It wasn't. The entire cast and crew struggled with the environment. Many, including Milan, fell ill from adjusting to the local food and water. The shoot lasted 65 grueling days, and tempers ran high. Eastwood later admitted he had to kill a real rattlesnake during filming because the Mexican authorities refused to release it back into the wild. Even then, he confessed he hated doing it because of his respect for animals. The experience left him drained, but it was Milan's presence that weighed on him most. The chemistry just wasn't there. On screen, their characters shared moments of tension, flirtation, and eventual romance. Off-screen, it was a complete different story. The lack of connection made every scene harder. The script called for slow-burning attraction, witty banter, and eventual intimacy. But what Eastwood felt was mostly friction. There was no spark, just static. And when Milan finally dropped the nun act in film, revealing herself to be a gun-towing prostitute instead, the irony wasn't lost on Eastwood. On screen, Hagen was stunned, bitter about all the chase nights he had spent with her on the road. Off-screen, Eastwood may have been just as disillusioned. The fake nun had a real punchline, but behind the scenes, it wasn't funny. What should have been a fun, high-concept western became a film Eastwood rarely mentions. While Twamules for Sister Sarah performed moderately well at the box office and received warm reviews, it didn't leave a good taste in his mouth. In fact, it marked the last time he would ever accept second billing in a movie. From then on, Clint Eastwood was the star. No exceptions. The irony? Despite all the tension, Eastwood and Milan looked great together on screen. The story was tight, the action held up. Critics praised the clever twist and Eastwood's dry performance. But for Eastwood, none of that mattered. Working with someone he didn't connect with, someone who, in his view, brought more resistance than collaboration, left him with one thought: never again. And that's why out of all the movies he's made, Two Mules for Sister Sarah is the one Clint Eastwood quietly regrets. Not because of location or the writing or the director, not because of the budget or the performance, but because of her, the co-star who turned what should have been a hit into one of the most uncomfortable shots of his career. Surely Milan may have played Sister Sarah, but behind the scenes, she was the real reason Eastwood never looked back. Which Clint Eastwood movie is your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video shown on your screen.